What's up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 2 of streamlining onboarding using entitlement management in Microsoft Entra ID. In part 1, which you can find in the video description below, I walked through how to configure an access package to support day 1 employee onboarding, and I also talked through a couple of useful security groups that I like to use to make the whole process just a little easier. In this video, we are going to simulate user provisioning from an HR application using PowerShell, and you'll see how that ties into some of the security groups we talked about in the first video. And then we will take a look at the end user experience of requesting the access package, what that approval process looks like, and then finally getting access to the resources. So let's jump in. Okay, so in this video, what we're looking to do is essentially simulate user onboarding via a HR app or a HR connector, for example. And the way in which we're going to do that is via PowerShell. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. Here's my script, which I prepared earlier. And essentially, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but long and short of it is it's going to go ahead and create the user with the attributes that I specify here. And there is an option within the script to provide a randomly generated password using secure string, which again, I can choose to output that password or not. So all we really need to do is go ahead and update the attributes that we can see here. In this case, we're going to go ahead and update the domain so it matches mine. In this case, we are adding Samantha to the finance department. She's going to be an analyst. We can leave the company name, that's fine. Usage location, important because that's required for licensing. See here that we are adding an employee ID. We're also specifying the employee type. And then this one's important. So this is the employee hire date. So if you think back to the security group that we were using for the finance new starters, going to be applicable for that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to update that to today. Nice and easy. And then here, optional, we can add the manager's UPN. So if we want to go ahead and add a manager in here, we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do myself. To add me as the manager. And then I'm going to scroll right down to the bottom of here. There is an option to reveal password for handover. For the purpose of this, I'm going to set that to true, which means that should then be outputted in our terminal window. So let's go ahead and run it. And then that script is going to go ahead and run. Okay, so now the script has run. And we can see we've got a nice little output here, just outlining a few of the attributes that we've specified. We can see that the manager has been set, and we've now got our temporary password for our user account. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait just a little bit of time, because essentially what's going to happen next is the user account is going to be created, and user is going to be dynamically assigned to the FTE user group. That's then going to assign a license to the user. That's then going to provision the mailbox, and any other dynamic group assignments are then going to run. However, what I also have in play, do you remember I had that dynamic security group for finance new starters. Our user has already been added into that dynamic group, so that's nice and quick. Let me show you what I've got configured using that group. So underneath Identity Governance and Lifecycle Workflow, I've got a finance team welcome email and onboarding workflow. So this is a pretty simple workflow. Essentially, it's using the trigger type added to group, and it's looking at our dynamic finance new starters group. So as long as the user has been added to the group, that's going to be the trigger. So at the next workflow run cycle, it's going to go ahead and it's going to run, it's going to execute the workflow. And in this case, it's just going to send a welcome email. And I've gone ahead and I've customized it here. Key bit here is that the user's going to get a nice onboarding experience, and there's going to be a whole lot of information here that points the user into the right direction for the access package so that they can then request access to the resources, and we can start that whole access governance lifecycle process. So I'm going to leave that for a little while, wait for the workflow to run, which actually, if we take a look, we should be able to see when that's going to run next. So 15:52, so not long. So we'll come back once that workflow has run. Okay, so we're a little bit over our last target run, but if we now come back into identity governance and we go into our workflow and we can check here, total processed users, we can clearly see Samantha Young, and that entire workflow has completed. So switching gears, if we jump into Samantha's account, and she goes ahead, she signed in with her temporary password that was generated. We were prompted to change that password on first sign in. Once we get into the user's mailbox, we can see, and here's the email that was sent from Entra ID governance. So we've got a nice introduction into the company, or what nice welcome, into the company. Now that your account is active, the next step is to request your finance resources access. This access package includes all of the tools, apps, and resources you need to hit the ground running. To get started, visit the My Access portal along with a link, sign in with your account, locate the finance resources access package, click requests, and follow the steps to submit. Your manager, Nathan Hutchinson, will review and approve the request. Once approved, you'll receive access to Teams and SharePoint sites, key applications like third-party finance apps, shared finance documents and dashboards, so on and so forth. So you can obviously customize that welcome email to say whatever you want, but making it welcome, making it easy for users to request access is kind of key here to driving adoption of access packages. So we'll go ahead and we'll click the link. It's going to open up in a new tab. And from here, the user can then view the access packages. So the default kind of pane, the default view here is to show suggested access packages. Presumably because the account is so new, it hasn't managed to do that yet. If we go ahead and select view all though, we can see the finance resources access package. So if we go ahead and hit request, we can see here in terms of the resources, these are the resources that we added. And if we go ahead and select continue, we're then asked for business justification. So new hire looking to access the finance resources, submit request. So as we know from part one of the video, we configured our access package approvals to go to the user's manager. We set myself as the manager. So what we'll do is we'll switch gears over to the manager. Here we can see we've received an approval email, approve or deny Samantha Young's request to access the finance resources. So we'll go ahead and click the link in the email. That's going to take us straight through to the My Access approvals window. And here we can see Samantha is requesting the finance resources. We can review it here, and we can see inside the request details the business justification. So this is a new hire looking to access the finance resources. Of course, I am Samantha's manager. I know Samantha has just started within the business, so I know that this is a legitimate request and is something that we ideally want to be approving. We can go ahead and provide a reason and just put something in there. New hire access approved. Something along those lines. And we'll go ahead and submit. So switching gears back to our user, Samantha, we can see now what's happened is as soon as that request was approved by Samantha's manager, she's then been automatically added to the finance team group, which if you didn't know, anytime you are added to a Microsoft 365 or team group, you receive this nice sort of introduction email saying welcome to the group. So we can see straight away the user's been added into the finance team group. And we've actually received an email off the back of the access package to say you've now received access to the finance resources. And that's kind of it. I mean, this is a fairly simple workflow and process, but you can see how, hopefully you can see how this particular configuration can be quite powerful and essentially remove a lot of the heavy lifting of provisioning access to resources, because ultimately administrators can just do all of the hard work, determine what resources are required for different roles, build out those role packages, and then essentially allow the access packages to provide access to those resources with those approval workflows governed by the individual's managers or governed by approval flows for specific people within the organization, and ultimately taking control of access to resources, providing a lot more control over them. So as you can see, if you are using a third-party HR tool, or even just good old automation using something like PowerShell, or one of the many MSP-centric solutions like SIP, if you have a Microsoft 365 E5 or E5 security license, you can benefit from using entitlement management with things like access packages and access reviews to streamline onboarding, but also govern resource access over time. And if you're using Entra ID governance, it's possible to spice things up a bit with additional automation options directly in Entra. Let me know in the comments if there's a particular scenario you'd like to see covered using either entitlement management or ID governance, and keep an eye out for future videos where I plan to jump into more advanced scenarios such as guest management using access packages. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.